Nobody really wants to know the future. We just want to hear you'll be all right. And we will. We'll be all right. These days, they will find us learning that we had it all wrong. But these days, they'll find us unashamed because we've been learning all along. John Gennaro, count me in! 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Today's first words belong to Defiance, Ohio, from their song You Are Loved off the 2010 record Midwestern Minutes, but the rest of them belong to me. Welcome to Devine Intervention, a self-help podcast about basketball. My name is Dan Devine, and before we get rolling, here are 3 things that I am grateful for today. Number 1, I get paid by Yahoo Sports to write about the NBA and talk about it into this microphone and into that camera. Pretty good deal. Number 2, I'm grateful that my friend and former guest, Michael Pina, just welcomed a new baby. Congratulations from all of us here at Devine Intervention to Michael and his family on the arrival of Maya last Friday. We hope that you enjoy the shift from checking 5-man lineup data to changing poopy diapers. One of the best reasons for doing stuff. And number 3, as important as all of that, I get to spend part of my morning catching up with someone that I haven't talked to in quite a while. My guest today is someone whose close and loving coverage of the Cleveland Cavaliers I first encountered about a decade ago at the blog Fear the Sword, where in one of his first posts, he explained that the place he comes from, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, is related to a Weaker Than song, one of my favorite Weaker Than songs, One Great City. And just like fellow Canadian Tristan Thompson, all these years later, he is still with the Cavs as one of the hosts of The Chase Down, a delightful and long-running podcast that a few years back became part of the Cavs media family. And unlike Tristan, to the best of my knowledge, he is not currently under suspension for testing positive for any banned substances, which allows him to appear today. Friends, a warm welcome for Justin Rowan. Justin, thank you so much for making the time for us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you so much for having me. It's a lot of fun. I had a sneaking suspicion that the Weaker Thans were going to come up at some point in this podcast.
They often do. I'm a sad boy, and I love how that guy writes about his cats. But Justin, I am here today with you, and I wanted you to be here today because even before, I wanted to talk about the Cavs. The Cavs have been one of the better stories in the league for the last month and a half. A story that I have not gotten to write about in any depth, and I've not really covered in any depth on any of the shows that we do. And so we were trying to line up the timing for this. And then it couldn't have worked out better because I get to talk to you the morning after the Cavs have one of the big statement wins of the season, a double-digit home win over a rampaging Clippers team. So we can talk about a team that is interesting in the immediate and the micro and the macro senses. There's just plenty of things to look forward to with this Cavs team and to pick apart and talk about. I could think of nobody else I would rather do it with than you. So that is why you are here today. But before we get to that, here on Devine Intervention, we try to always operate from a place of joy. So, Justin Rowan, what is something from the world of basketball that has brought you joy this week?
I'm going to be a little sappy here and just go macro with this. And I'm going to
totally
say
fine. Bring it.
And I'm not just kissing your ass here, but I honestly, I think it's being on this podcast and just reflecting on, because I just came off of vacation for the last 2 weeks. I appreciate you pushing this back and making the time, but it just makes me reflect on kind of where everything's gone. You mentioned, me blogging about the team. It basically came out of, hey, I really want to talk about my favorite team, and not a lot of people in Winnipeg care about the Cavs. So therefore, I'm going to start blogging. Then I found out, I'm not the strongest writer, but I really do like having conversations. I like talking to people that see basketball the way that I do, that have a love and appreciation for everything that's going on. And the fact that it's come so far that Carter and I start up this little podcast, and our expectation was, hey, we're going to be shouting into the void for a couple of years. But you know what? We want to do this. We love it. And within a short period of time, the Cavs reach out. They bring us into their family. The fact that we haven't had to change the podcast since starting the partnership, just because it was just such a kind of blend of everything. And the fact that I get to do that. I'm not a journalist. I'm not a reporter. I'm not a great writer. I'm not someone that grinds tons of film, but just gets to talk about the love of the game. And that opens doors to come on podcasts like this one that are about the love of the game. To me, that's something I'm incredibly grateful for right now.
Well, That's lovely. I don't love the part where you decided that you had to one down yourself about like all of the other things that you do. Like, I'm not that smart. I'm not that good a writer. I'm not that good looking. My breath isn't that great all the time. And yet I get to be on. We can just acknowledge that you are here for a good reason, because you know this team, you love this team, and it comes through in your coverage of this team. And I mean, anybody who has been, you waded through some tough, you had some great years at the start of the podcast. You waded through some tough ones. Like you've earned your stripes to be able to join shows even as august as this one. So it's my pleasure to bring you in, and to bring you in to talk about, this white hot Cleveland Cavaliers team, or I don't know, like wine and gold hot, whatever the appropriate color scheme of hotness is. The Cavs are that. We're coming off of a 118-108 win over the Clippers on Monday night. Again, statement win over arguably the hottest team, second hottest team, whatever in the NBA. Donovan Mitchell goes out and he's dealing with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and everybody else all night. And it's 28 points and 12 assists, only 2 turnovers, a couple of steals and a block as the defense continues to pick up from him. We'll talk about that a little bit. The driving kick, playmaking, everything he's opening up. The game just looks like it's on easy mode for Donovan Mitchell right now, cruising to another All-Star selection, I have to imagine, when the reserves are announced on Thursday night. And this has been emblematic of the way the Cavs have been playing, 10-2 in January, and they've got the Pistons coming up on Wednesday. So, you don't want to get too far ahead of yourselves, but 11-2 certainly within arm's reach. And it goes back really to the middle of December, to with that moment when there was an inflection point in the season. You already had Evan Mobley out with arthroscopic knee surgery. Darius Garland, in the midst of like an up and down start to the season for him, fractures his jaw, goes on the injured list for an extended period. And it's like they're 13-12. Is this a team that overachieved last year and is about to dip? And then since then, 15-4. Now they're only a half game out of third in the East, right there, like hot on the heels of the Bucks and the Sixers, right there with the Knicks. Top 10 level offense since the middle of December. Best defense in the league since that time. How did we get here, Justin? When those injuries happened, kind of what did that force the Cavaliers to do, and how have they been able to benefit from that adversity?
Yeah, it's funny because when the second game against Boston occurred, where the Cavs lost both of those games in Boston, Carter and I were sitting there on the podcast being like, well, you know what? Evan Mobley, he should be back soon. We should be getting to full health, and we've had the second toughest schedule in the league. So this is the point where we're going to go on a run. Everyone's going to get healthy. We're finally going to get some continuity. And then, of course, the next day, Mobley and Garland get announced out for the next 6 weeks. But even throughout that stretch, like even though the schedule was lighter, we didn't know what it was going to look like. In the past, even though, the Donovan Mitchell era has been so successful in Cleveland, when he's been operating as the lone ball handler without a point guard, the offense hadn't been as strong. Now, the minutes were still productive, but he kind of has struggled in that role historically. And I think there was an expectation that he was going to be a little more ball dominant in that stretch. They're going to have to kind of grit it out on defense, and they'd have to muddy up the games a little bit. And that has been the furthest thing from the case. I think Donovan Mitchell has been playing my favorite brand of basketball that I've ever seen him play. He is dominating games without dominating on the ball. The team just has so much momentum with how they play. And even the first stretch, like Garland and Mobley get announced out, Mitchell misses time with an illness, and they still manage to win, I think, 4 of the 5 games without Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley. Like, that should not be possible for a team that's made a consolidation trade that's a little top heavy. So the way that they're playing, not necessarily faster, because they've actually gone a little bit slower since Garland's been out, but they're playing quicker in the half court. The ball isn't sticking. They're getting 3-point shots up with volume. And while that's been the way that they've wanted to play all season, it's kind of funny that, through necessity, I think sometimes when you have guys like Dean Wade or Isaac Okoro that don't want to step on any toes, that want to make the right play, they can be a little hesitant when they get those opportunities. But when guys are out, it's okay, well, the ball's coming to me and I'm semi-open. I'm going to take that shot. And I just think that everybody's been empowered on the offense, and it's been leading to these results.
And the results have been extraordinarily impressive. You mentioned the kind of the ball movement, and it's sort of paradoxical in one sense, where you're like, you get rid of or you lose an all-star caliber point guard in Darius Garland, but the flow of the ball movement seems like it improves a little bit. Before Garland went out, the Cavs were 18th in passes per game per Second Spectrum tracking, 25th in assists, 19th in secondary assists. And then since, you mentioned this sort of shift where it's Donovan on the ball pretty much full time, and then more low usage ball mover shooters on the floor, it's first in passes per game, 8th in assists, 14th in secondary assists. These sort of general metrics of like, this is how you can tell the ball's popping around and there's more guys. It's like the touch time is down. The flow is just a little bit like more uncluttered, and not necessarily an indication of this is like Garland was a sticking point in the offense, but it does seem like things have gotten a little simpler in a way that has been a major benefit has helped sort of streamline things, and which is against the softer part of the schedule, as you mentioned. Let the offense kind of or at least take flights, stay afloat there, which it was only needed to be like a little bit better than okay with how great the defense is, and so much of that goes back to the play of Jarrett Allen. Jarrett Allen felt like a guy whose reputation got muddied a little bit by that first round series against the Knicks, in part by virtue of him being like self-aware enough and open and vulnerable enough to say like, yeah, it felt like the lights were kind of bright for me. I maybe didn't play my best basketball, like acknowledging what everybody else saw and being vocal about it. I'll open the door for people to be like, yeah, and that guy's soft, get rid of him. And then, come to find out, actually, all-star caliber center, not soft, like 18 and 12 on 65% shooting, passing the ball really well, super great perimeter, interior defender, someone you can funnel everybody at. Oh, that guy's actually really good. And what he has shown the last, month and a half or so is maybe in a way where if you thought he was somebody you might need to move away from, maybe instead somebody you need to make sure you keep around for as long as possible.
Yeah, and I've been thrilled by it. It is funny that people latched onto that. And obviously, whenever a quote becomes a meme, it's going to get distributed pretty widely. And It's funny because Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell both said basically the same thing in various interviews. But, Allen's going to be the one. I think this is natural with fans of a team. Blame will be put on whoever they feel is most kind of dispensable, whether that's a coach, whether that's, a role player, especially in this kind of modern age where people latch onto stars and they will root for stars above even teams. We must absolve them of blame at all times. And that first round series, like, the blame is shared across the team. Like, I don't think anybody played particularly well. It was just kind of a across the board failure from them. And I like the fact that Jarrett Allen was willing to say, hey, like, this is what it was for me. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, no, I was totally confident. I was playing my best basketball, and that's what that is. No, we saw what was happening there. And when we had the chance to talk to him at Media Day, he basically talked about, hey, I looked at where we had shortcomings within our offense. I looked at, hey, we kind of struggle a little bit against drop coverage. They were anticipating Mobley and Allen were going to, look to pass in those situations. So I'm going to become better from mid-range. I worked on my game as a passer. I've done all these little small nuance things that can make a difference in the long run. And we've seen it. His playmaking has made a massive jump this year. The fact that you can kind of use him as that short roll hub, that's really important because kind of the thesis of this Cavs construction is, all right, we have a core four that works really well together when they're on the court, and we are going to stagger the guards and bigs so that you have 48 minutes of at least one elite rim protector and one elite playmaker at all times. And if you can have Jarrett Allen kind of replicate that short roll playmaking that Evan Mobley does, you have continuity within your system. So I think him stepping up the way he has and doing so with Donovan Mitchell, that's the kind of growth that I think can pay long-term dividends for this team.
And the playmaking component, I think, is something that maybe a lot of people didn't expect to grow in Jarrett Allen's game. But you're absolutely right. A career high assist number and like by a significant number, the jump in assist numbers, both the per game, the per minute, the, assist percentage, all those sorts of things, the indicators of how often you're, delivering the ball to a teammate, like all through the roof for him. And his stability in that role, like he's going to be a really good pick and roll dive man. We already, that's baked into who he is as a player. But yeah, like if you've got that end, he's more comfortable making those reads, making those decisions when he's slipped the ball in space after, the defense traps the ball out of Donovan's hand or whatever. And he's also like a 50% shooter on floaters now. Like he's legitimately good there. I think like something like 12 for 23 or something from mid-range, like further out in the mid-range too. Like it's not, I don't imagine you're going to want to build the whole offense out of Jarrett Allen pick and pop mid-range jumpers, but it's nice to know that that's a club you've got in the bag if you need it. And I think where so much of this comes down to, we'll get to the existential crises soon. That's Devine Intervention, : we'll get to the existential crises soon. Put it on a t-shirt. But I think, these are huge developments and advancements. Mitchell being looking as good and as comfortable. His playmaking has never looked better than this, I don't think. I think you're absolutely right. This is, there's an advanced metrics case for it, like highest estimated plus minus of his career, top 10, caliber player in all sorts of the alphabet soup, all in one metrics. But you just see it on the court too. Like even watching the game against the Clippers, he is staring down Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, mixing those dudes up with double crosses, getting around them, turning the corner on them, and then drawing help. And he's like underhand bowling, slinging passes across the court to the corner. He's firing them with both hands. He just looks so comfortable in that sort of spread ecosystem. And I want to use this opportunity to shout out the others, quote unquote, like Shaq would call them, the complementary pieces who have done such a fantastic job during this 15-4 stretch. One guy that has been a kind of a punching bag for at least national types especially, but I'm sure in some corners of the Cavs fan base is Isaac Okoro, because what we want so often for guys, he was a top 5 pick, right? And like it was supposed to be the ideal 3-and-D piece that fits next to your ball dominant playmaking guards and between them and your, top flight bigs. But it was like D and, D plus and 3- or whatever, like however you, he's like 1.5 and D plus. I don't know. But he has, the numbers don't leap off the page. It's like, I think a little over 10 points or around 11 points a game, 3 rebounds, 2 assists during this stretch. But he's shooting 57% inside the arc. He's shooting 44% from the corners. He looks confident shooting off the catch on those shots. And maybe even more important than that, he looks confident when teams are closing out. First off, he's drawing those closeouts because he's actually shooting the ball and shooting it well when he gets it. But he looks confident when he draws that closeout, attacking it hard, putting the ball on the deck, hard drive to the basket. And when he's doing that, he's a live threat, not just to score around the rim, but also he's getting more comfortable sort of shoveling the passes on the inside, feeding Jarrett Allen, cutting out of the dunker spot, trying to move the ball to a cutter, getting into the paint. And like, that's all it needs to be, right? Like if you can do that, make them honor you defensively in the corners, be a threat to make a play on the ball when you got the opportunity to your eyes is, be willing and able to make the extra pass, then you get to stay on the court and then the defense plays. And so in a time where the chips were down and you're like, well, where are we going to get more out of it? To get more out of him in this context has been a really important part of this Cavs run.
Yeah, he's been massive for them. And I think so often the Cavs defense gets talked about as Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. But yes, Isaac Okoro has played such an important role in that. I think he's one of the best point of attack defenders in the league. And it's interesting because the shooting has kind of turned around for him for a while now. We kind of have been tracking the end of January of 2022 as the turnaround point where he started hitting shots more confidently, being a little more willing to take them. And since the end of January 2022, he's shooting 38.5% from 3 on about 340 attempts. Like we're starting to get to a decent sample size, but the problem has always been, okay, you're shooting a good percentage, but the volume isn't enough to really get defenders to go out there. Like it's nice that you're taking 2.5, 3 attempts a game and hitting them at a decent clip, but that's not going to change how defenses are going to play when you're the third best shooter in a lineup with Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen, because we're going to focus on taking away the pick and roll. We're going to make teams uncomfortable. And it's funny because this stretch, Okoro and Dean Wade have played such a massive part, both, stepping into the starting lineup, both, displaying two-way play, being willing to take those threes. And, the Cavs, the guys they brought in, Max Strus, George Niang, Ty Jerome, unfortunately hasn't been healthy, but the guys they brought in got so much attention, but Dean Wade and Isaac Okoro were not healthy last year going into the playoffs. Right. Okoro had missed a month straight prior to that Knicks series and was still banged up, questionable for game one. I think he twisted his knee in game one, fighting for a ball with Julius Randle, if I remember correctly. And Dean Wade couldn't really lift his arm above his shoulder.
I was going to say that was a shoulder issue for him, right?
Yeah, he had torn his shoulder. I think even, still at media day, he didn't have full range of motion, but he's been working at it. But that was the role players for the Cavs. It was right. Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, and Karis LeVert. So the fact that you already had such a top-heavy team, two of your most important role players weren't really factors. And outside of that, you could go to Jetty Osman, who will provide streaky shooting, but defense is a minus, or Danny Green coming off massive knee surgery and a lot of issues there. There just wasn't the depth there. So to see kind of the redemption for Dean Wade and Isaac Okoro, who are likely going to take lesser roles now that the team is getting healthy, it's really nice to see. But I think they've made kind of that strong case of these guys need to be in the rotation. They need to be factors, because for the Cavs, if you're going to do this whole staggering of the two bigs thing, you probably need a four that can stretch the floor, rebound, and is switchable. And Dean Wade is that exact archetype. So when he's confident playing well, that's what you need. You also probably need a point of attack defender when you're staggering the guards. Isaac Okoro brings that to the table. So they both bring skill sets that nobody else does. So for them to gain confidence and to be playing well over the stretch, I think is really important.
Also important is the contributions that you've gotten from Sam Merrill, which is one of the cooler stories and sort of more surprising stories in the league the last month and a half. A guy, was an absolute neon green light. And, if remember, or correct me if I'm wrong here, but he had been in Memphis and had some ankle injuries and stuff, right? And so he had gotten some opportunities, bounced around a little bit, but then it was, the G League draft comes around and he's right at the top of the G League draft and goes and gets an opportunity. Yeah, first overall in the G League draft. So gets in the system, gets an opportunity with Canton. And all of a sudden it's well, now there's, we need more depth on the main roster. He gets in there and it is the second you get the floor. As you said, these guys who maybe would be deferring or deferential in other contexts are now I'm in here to do a job. I got to do it. And man alive, is he doing that job. My old coworker and friend Danny Chow at The Ringer wrote about Sam Merrill earlier this week. And the stat that he had that I loved was he is shooting 17.2 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, a level of volume in terms of when he's on the court that trails only 2018-19 James Harden and 2020-21 Steph Curry. So that is it's to the point where it's not that you lack a conscience, it's that everybody involved in that roster has told you it would be unconscionable for you to not shoot. You catch it at the logo, go. You are, sprinting off a screen, falling out of bounds, who cares? Let it go, because he has been that accurate, and the volume and the accuracy, the ability to shoot off the catch and off the move, to work in dribble handoffs with the bigs, all these sort of different aspects of how the Cavs want to play, and how JB Bickerstaff has said multiple times. I know before the season there was all the talk of more dynamic offense, more threes, faster, get into things quicker, all that kind of stuff. This is a manifestation of how you get there, and it opens up so much. Whether that is something that can hold up in the course of a playoff series when a team is going to look for, who can we hunt on a switch, 6'4" guard that we think we can attack. Maybe notable that he only played 7 minutes against the Clippers, who are a team that's sort of built like that. It remains to be seen how valuable a piece that is come April, May, June. But A, shooting always is going to have a chance to fail. And B, even if all Sam Merrill did was get you from December to January, holy hell, what a valuable thing to do. Yeah,
and this is another example of Cavs kind of finding value on the margins. Dean Wade and Lamar Stevens, undrafted players, both got second contracts. Craig Porter Jr. appears to be a great find for them and has been someone that's helped them.
The reason that they held on through that Donovan list stretch earlier, where you were like, they won a few games when he was out, and I was like, the Craig Porter Jr. takeover.
I could not be more excited for him to be the Cavs' Derek White of the future. I love his ability to go out there and get blocks, steals, rebounds, like just such an athletic guard. And then Sam Merrill, like the gravity that he has. And, the Clippers are an interesting matchup because they have so much length. They can switch everything. It's a little harder to kind of run them off screens and get kind of movement shooting. But the interesting thing is, okay, there's going to be some matchups where you can't really play Sam Merrill. You don't know if that team's also going to have the personnel to hunt George Niang. Like there's going to be matchups where George Niang is a little, more valuable. He brings that movement shooting and is able to, draw the attention of the defense. Most teams don't have the personnel to really kind of hunt, a power forward that's doing that as well as a shooting guard. So I think for the regular season, Sam Merrill has earned the right to be in the rotation and to get opportunities. But just having kind of the versatility to go with different looks, to get that shooting at different positions, that's something that they didn't have. Like, the Knicks series, obviously, like it was such a brutal series for the Cavs and such kind of a reality check. But when we were evaluating it, we were sitting there and like, there weren't a lot of levers to pull. Like we know what needs to be done, but there weren't a lot of options there. And our big goal heading into the season was the supporting cast needs to get to a point that it is not a story when we're evaluating the fit of the core. Like that can't be, okay, Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen, it didn't really work out, but they didn't have any shooting. They didn't have anybody else that could put on the ball on the floor. There's no supplemental playmaking. Like that can't be the story. And I really feel like the Cavs have done a good enough job with the supporting cast that we're actually going to be able to properly evaluate what those four guys can be.
And to that point, one of the, as you're evaluating all of this and, how real is this 19-20 game stretch and how much can you project forward and all that kind of stuff. What's the reason to believe that this team as constituted would have a better chance in a tough first round matchup like that Knicks series this time around? I think one thing that's really valuable to look at is, well, why, as you mentioned, why did they lose that series? What were the issues that they had in that series? And so much of it was defensive rebounding and outside shooting, right? Like you couldn't keep the Knicks off the offensive glass. And when they packed the paint and dared you to make threes, the Cavs were unable to do it. A stat that I found in this that blew my mind, not to bring up bad old times, but we're here, is the Cavs defensive rebounding percentage in that series was 60.6%, which would have finished dead last in the league in each of the previous 25 regular seasons. The only team in the like NBA.com advanced stats drop down menu of each year, the only team that was worse was the 97-98 Raptors. So it's like, oof. if your rebounding was 97-98 Raptors level, not getting it done. I believe that team won 16 games. So not what you're looking for in a first round playoff series. And then the 3-point shooting, as we talked about, they only, the Knicks dared them. And even within that daring, the Cavs only got up, I think like 31 or a game or so. And they missed more than 2/3 of them. So it's like, if you knew what the problems were, we got to clear the glass better. And we've got to be able to generate and make threes at a higher clip. During this run, Cavs defensive rebounding rate up over 75%. That's the best in the NBA since December 15th. 3-point attempts per game, just under 42, second in the NBA in that stretch. And 3-point shooting, 37.2%, which is right outside the top 10. So this is, as you mentioned, it's not just, are we finding the value on the margins? Are we maximizing the talent that we've got? Do we have all-star contributors? We think we had these, ABC problems, and can we address them? Obviously, the signing of Strus was a huge part of that. Bringing in George Niang is a huge part of that. Finding Merrill is a huge part of that, but also ongoing development and better health from Okoro and Wade. And now suddenly you look at a roster that's got a bunch of different options to answer these kinds of questions. And here's where we get back to the existential crisis, Justin, because all of those numbers pointing in the right direction happened without, or most of them happened without Mobley on the floor and without Garland on the floor. Mobley comes back last night on a minutes restriction, only about 20 minutes. And you saw, the immediate value of like, oh, he's a grab and go playmaker that can go the length of the floor, take it end to end and dunk in traffic. He is, again, as you mentioned, we have 48 minutes of elite rim protection, interior defense, switchability from our five, and then also a guy who can be a playmaker and a connector that it has immense value. There's also, it's still when they're both on the floor together, when Allen and Mobley were on the floor together, there were some really great defensive moments and there were some points where the offense looked a little bit rickety. Some of that is just going to be rust, but some of that is also maybe baked into the structure of it. When you've seen how comfortable everything looked with the spread floor, does it give you any pause about the too big construction, or do you feel like we've seen it be successful enough in the regular season, we believe that the fundamentals there make sense and the staggering component makes sense, like we just got to continue to sort of damn the torpedoes with it and see if more reps gets us where we want to go?
I mean, I'm going to be nervous because I'm that way by nature. I'm always going to be a little fearful, like anytime you're going to have success.
A less successful rap group, nervous by nature.
Like I'm going to sit there and anytime there's success, I'm going to be like, is the other shoe going to drop? And yes. You know, that's part of being a Cleveland and Winnipeg sports fan that's baked into it.
Yeah, you really got a twofer going there, man.
We're really Cleveland North or Cleveland is Winnipeg South. Like, you know, there's too many parallels. The Jets got taken away. The Browns got taken away. Like, it's a mess. But what I always kind of keep in mind is like the struggles early this season weren't because the core didn't work together. It was because they weren't playing together. Like there was no real continuity. The starting lineup has only got 11 games together. And during that stretch, Garland was dealing with a hamstring injury. Mitchell was dealing with a hamstring injury. Darius had a shooting hand issue that was plaguing him for about a month where he had a wrap on. He was holding his hand all the time, wasn't taking threes. Like that's going to make things difficult. And even with that, they still had a +6 net rating as a starting unit. And what gives me some confidence is I look at last year's stats, and I have to look at last year's sample size because we just don't have one for this year.
Right.
And their starting lineup with Isaac Okoro actually had a 122 offensive rating, which is better than their offensive rating of 120 during this stretch. And I just have a hard time getting my head around the idea that replacing Isaac Okoro with Max Strus is going to hurt the offense. And so my conclusion is Garland and Mitchell not playing up to their standards early in the year was the bigger factor. And when you look at last year, the two big lineup actually was better offensively. Like when both of the bigs were on the court, they had a 119 offensive rating. It was about 115 with just Mobley and 115 with just Allen. And the biggest thing is last year, they didn't have the personnel to kind of play that 4 out when they were staggering. Even the two big lineup against the Knicks, even with how poorly they all played offensively. And you were talking about haunting stats. The one you didn't bring up that continues to haunt me to this day. If you had to guess Evan Mobley's points per possession as a role man in that Knicks series, where would you go?
Oh man, there weren't very many good ones that I can recall. I would go under 0.75.
Yeah, so it was 0.08.
Oh,
he scored 1 point.
So I'd cash the under then. Okay, good to know.
Yeah,
good to know.
Yeah. And like the whole thing is like when people talk about you can't win around, you know, a small backcourt or a small guard as your best player. What that usually means is defenses are able to kind of key in and throw length at those guys, and it impacts their ability to impact the game. The only time you see that work, whether it's, you know, Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet at both sub 6 feet, or Steph Curry, is if you have a front court playmaker that's able to be that hub and kind of provide some initiation. Like, I think for this Cavs kind of model to work, Evan Mobley needs to be that hub to alleviate the pressure when teams trap Garland, when they trap Mobley, or trap Mitchell, rather. Like, he needs to be that playmaker. Jarrett Allen needs to be that playmaker because you don't really have it on the wing. And he came up short in that scenario. The other haunting stat, Mitchell took about 9 open shots a game and shot 40% on them. Like, if any of those things go differently with like how close some of those games were, that would be helpful for the Cavs. But when I look at how good they were as a 4-man group, 121 offensive rating last year as a 4-man group, the Garland-Mobley lineup without Mitchell and Allen at a +12 net rating. The one that wasn't as strong, only +8, which is still pretty good, is that Mitchell and Allen. So if you now have them developing a stronger chemistry together, we already know Garland and Mobley works. We already know the 4 together works. Now you can get that 48 minutes of sustained offense. And as much as people focus on the starting group, if the two bigs are playing about 34 minutes a night, you're probably looking at about 18 together. And the remaining 30 of the 48 minutes is going to be 4-out offense. So if you can get those 18 to be good offensively and defensively, and the other 30, you're better offensively and you take a small step back defensively, I think that's a sustainable path to success. I'm losing my voice.
That's okay. Well, you're overcome with emotion at the idea of
it was so emotional. We're finally getting them back. Garland's coming back. I'm choked up.
Well, yeah, and to that point, not long before we got on, I know JB Bickerstaff last night or at Monday's game said that Darius Garland is extremely close to return. We learned Tuesday morning, Shams Charania reported that it's expected that Darius will come back on Wednesday for the game against the Pistons. And the additional details to that were that he had his jaw wired shut for the last 4 weeks, had been on primarily like a liquid diet, only recently got the screws taken out, which maybe it's just me. I try to not have any screws in my jaw if I can avoid it. I'm sure Darius would feel the same way, but having the screws taken out of your jaw that would allow you to then, eat more real food and gain muscle. Like the idea that, oh yeah, he's going to be coming back. It's going to take him some time to get back to his full fitness because he couldn't eat for like a month is kind of a wild thing to be true. But so now we're looking at a reintroduction of Darius Garland into the mix. And I guess before we get into the serious parts, I will offer this as an opportunity. I think I cursed Darius Garland. We've talked about this a little bit. Before the start of the season was like, I think that guy's the most underrated player in the NBA, and I want to write about that. And so when they came to Brooklyn, I got a few minutes with them, and I talked to him, and I talked to some other people on the Cavs. I also might have cursed Tristan Thompson. I talked to him for a couple minutes. I might have cursed Ty Jerome. I talked to him for a couple minutes. I might have just been like an absolute plague going through the members of the Cavs that I talked to, and wrote up this piece, and I was all ready to go. And then hamstring injury, and then as you mentioned, the hand issue, and has the neck strain against the Lakers and hits his head on the court, and so all throughout the first couple of months of the season, every time it looked like Garland might be able to kind of get going, my curse reared its ugly head. So I guess I just want to offer you this opportunity. If you want to be mad at me publicly on mic, like I kind of can't blame you for it.
Yeah. And when you mentioned that on the podcast, I was like, well, I'm going to have Dan on as soon as that piece drops, because Darius, when you talk about sparking basketball joy, he has been that for me. Like that is my recovery after, losing LeBron, after losing Kyrie, getting Darius back. And unfortunately, Halliburton has kind of taken the mantle of next Steve Nash, but Garland actually might be more of it because we're begging for him to take more threes. Yes. We bullied him a little bit at media day. But like last year, the difference when Garland was on the court, like as much as Donovan makes a big difference, from an on-off standpoint, it was still Garland, like by a wide margin. They had the second best offense in the league when he was on the court. They have the 29-20 stat. Like he is that guy that stirs the drink for this team, and I'm so excited to have him back. But I think I've got to take some responsibility too, because when we talked to Max Strus on media day, I was talking about, hey, you had to play a lot of 4 with Miami with the injuries. Like you had a long stretch where you didn't have point guards. You were in the second percentile in terms of how open your threes are. How does it feel to be playing in Cleveland where you're going to have Darius getting you open shots and, Ty Jerome's here. You're going to have point guards. And somehow for the third year in a row, we have the Cavs playing extended stretches without their first, second, and third string point guards. Like, I don't understand how that's possible. Like, Max in the games where Garland plays, he's shooting 45% from 3, or 45% from the floor and 41% from 3. And his season averages are like 40 and 33. So that tells you where he's been at without Garland. So I think he's going to be really happy to have him back. But I think we are equally a jinx because Allen got hurt and all of a sudden Strus was playing power forward without a point guard on the floor again. Like it's us. It is what it is.
That's all right. Well, I appreciate you sharing the responsibility with me. Just the way that my mental makeup is, I'm going to continue to blame myself, but I appreciate you wanting to shoulder the burden. The concern that exists, and that maybe it's not in your frame of reference, but I know in some other places, and I can understand it as well, is Garland comes back, and yes, absolutely, all-star talent, somebody that I believe in as a source of sort of efficient offense, a guy who doesn't need to generate a ton of shots for himself in order to generate efficient offense for everybody, to the point where, as you said, you were bullying him. I asked him about it. He said, I hear from everybody that I need to shoot more. I need to take more threes. I have to. That said, we have also now seen a couple of months or a month and a half of how this works when you have like another smaller point guard who is better at a lot of things than him operating in a spread floor in this structure. And do you have any, you mentioned the staggering component. Like, do you think that this should be a bring Darius along slowly, like bring him off the bench to keep Okoro's defense in the starting lineup for a little bit? Do you think it's throw him in the pool, get everybody as many reps as they can as immediately? Like, do you have any concerns about the reintegration of Garland upsetting the apple cart a little bit with the rhythm and the flow that this offense has found?
I have slight concerns. I think one of the biggest takeaways, from his standpoint is we got to have that quick decision making. And that's one of the toughest things, especially for, as you mentioned, he had his mouth wired shut for a month, wasn't allowed to do any cardio, wasn't allowed to elevate his heart rate over that stretch. Like, I expect the processing speed to be a little bit slower. And one of the great things about him, one of the things I love about his game is he's so good both on and off the ball.
Yes.
And I think once he kind of gets back into form, I expect it to work well. You look at last year, they were better together than they were apart. Same thing with Allen and Mobley. And obviously as the four of them together. But I think there is going to be an integration process. I wouldn't bring him off the bench just because, one, like, you want to get them comfortable right off the bat. The other advantage is, hey, you're still in a very soft part of your schedule. Like, I think before the All-Star break, the only difficult games that they really have are against the Kings, who are going to be at the end of a long road trip, I believe 3 and 4 nights, and then one against Philly right before the All-Star break. So you kind of have 2 weeks here to get them back into shape, and I think you hope that it takes off after the All-Star break. But I do think that his game is one that meshes well for how they're playing. Like, when you talk about, okay, we're going to play with pace, we're going to go 4 out, we're going to space the floor a little bit more. It should work better with Darius in there instead of Isaac Okoro. Like, that should be higher volume, that should be higher pace. And when you look at the success they were able to have against the Clippers, like, in theory, that should be the worst possible team to bring Evan Mobley back against, where you're starting Isaac Okoro, Mobley, and Jarrett Allen against the team that has all these big wings, that switches everything, that blows up whatever you're trying to do offensively. And it still worked. And I think the key to that is having that ball movement, making sure nobody is hanging on to the ball too long, and making sure that when you do have a good look, you take it. And we just can't have those record scratches from Darius where he's passing up a good look to try to get a teammate a great look. He's so good at that. And I think his heart's in the right place there. But he's got to have that quicker trigger, because I think if he's got the quick trigger and he's willing to play both on and off ball, then this works even better than it did last year.
You mentioned all the injuries and the sort of fits and starts beginning to the season. Even within that, just under 21 and 6 a game, the shooting was starting to pick up a little bit. Yeah. And I think the thing to watch there is his turnovers were up in an uncharacteristic way. And I would imagine like if that smooths out, the 3-point shooting picks back up, he is about as seamless a fit as you can ask for. It's the concern again becomes more about 2 small guards in the backcourt. But if you're able to have more size on the wings and you're able to get Mobley and Allen operating at the same levels that they were, then you might not have a whole lot of concerns there, with the exception, just general exception of, and maybe this is I'll put a button on the conversation. The only problem the Cavs have right now is that the other teams in the East are also looking pretty incredible. Like, that you've got the Celtics are, far. I mean, although the Cavs just beat the Celtics, but like the Celtics are far and away the class of the league right now. The Bucks just make the switch to Doc Rivers, TBD on that. Lost his first game with against the Nuggets, but certainly Giannis and Dame gives you plenty to be concerned about in a short series or over the course of the rest of the season. Embiid has been a monster. He's obviously been in and out, but the Sixers with him and Maxey been one of the better teams in the league. The net rating is right up there. The Knicks have been surging right alongside the Cavs. And so you have this still like it's the all the pieces have changed around, but it's still that top 5 from last season. And I guess where do you see the Cavs stacking up in that group right now? And then what are your hopes for where they could be once they do get that core 4 fully reintegrated?
Yeah, I think one of their big advantages is because their schedule is so front loaded, like they have a very advantageous path to try to get into that 2-3 seed. Right now, they're just one game back in the loss column of Milwaukee in the 2 seed. And, that's more important than total games bad because you can make up wins, but you can't make up losses. So I think they have a really good chance to get either 2 or 3. Just Bucks and Sixers having tougher schedules, new coach you have in Milwaukee. I just think that they're in really, really good shape to do that. And that's to me, that's the most important thing, because if you're in that 4 or 5 series, that's a toss up at the best of times. Right. It's a bloodbath this year. I think the Knicks are built for sustainable success. I think they did a tremendous job building that roster. They still have the assets to get better. There are not going to be easy matchups in the first round, but I think you want to avoid Boston in the second round if you can get there. That should still be the goal for Cleveland, is, take kind of those incremental steps forward and put yourself in the best position possible. And as sacrilegious as it is to say, I wouldn't mind playing Miami. I'd certainly rather play Miami, Indy, or Orlando over Boston, Philly, New York. That's going to be a first round matchup. That 4-5 is going to be a bloodbath, and I want to avoid it at all costs. So I think that's kind of what I got my eye on. I feel pretty good. They have 38 games left, 29 of which are against teams below them in the standings. 18 are against teams with a losing record. They're still going to have some of those litmus test games. They play Philly 3 times. They play New York again. They play Boston again. So you're going to have those opportunities, but they really have to, prioritize taking care of business, not having any slip-ups, and beating the teams that they should beat. And if they do that, they're probably going to avoid that 4 or 5 seed.
All right. Before we move on to closing 5, I want to make sure to give you at least a few seconds to clear out here. We're gonna run 1-4 flat, give you an opportunity. Talk to me about Emoni Bates.
I love a hooper. He is the most reckless gunner. He takes almost 11 threes a game in the G League, shooting 43%. I mean, again, you talk about Cavs trying to find value in the margins, and to get him in the late 40s in the draft, someone that's 6'9", that shoots the hell out of the ball. We had Mike Garrity, coach of the Charge, on our podcast recently, and he talked about just how much he's committing to trying to round out his game, understanding that defense is going to get him on the floor. And if he can kind of be like the string bean Michael Porter Jr. for the Cavs, that's something that would be really valuable. And honestly, I think on last year's team, he'd probably be getting run because they just needed shooting so desperately.
Right.
But this way, they're actually able to bring him along at a appropriate pace. He's going to get his opportunities. He gets to practice with the team, and I'm just very excited about what he can be, because, wings that are that tall that can shoot the hell out of the ball like him, that is something that's hard to come across. So I'm very, very excited for Emoni.
Yeah, I know our friend Kristen Peak was super high on him heading into the draft, and only turned 20 a couple of days ago. And with the jumper and the size is going to get a chance to those will get chances to fail, and then how he defends is going to be able to tell the tale there. I'll be honest, watching this Cavs team play and watching this version of Mitchell, I'm I also on the Knicks side of that, I don't necessarily want to go through the 4-5 again. I'm yeah, it worked out all right last time, but I don't know, you want to take your chances too many times. It looks like they learned some stuff from that last one. And although OG Anunoby to blow up a dribble handoff offense might be a nice option. Anyway.
Nobody's better at defending Donovan in the league than OG. Just historically, he's given him fits.
That's one of my great, I don't know ball moments, is that I was just sitting there watching them and going oh, right, it's good because he's big. Him being bigger than all the other guys they had, that's helpful. That's nice and smart. And someone was yeah, that's the whole, I was yeah, no, for sure. I looked at the metrics and I realized that guy's big, and that's nice and helpful. We move on now to the closing 5, something we like to call the closing 5, because as I'm sure you know, Justin, how you start is not nearly as important as how you finish. And we finish here with 5 questions for our lovely guest. Question number 1, we talked at the beginning of this about your upbringing in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. What was your first basketball love from that vantage point?
Appropriately, Rasheed Wallace was one of them. I mean, the time that I started watching basketball, it was, ironically, I really like Carlos Boozer on the Cavs. We saw a lot of Central Division games there, and I was trying to figure out, all right, which one's my team? I can't go Chicago because they just had Mike. That's a bandwagon. Cavs, they drafted LeBron. Yeah, that's probably going to be interesting. I'll follow along with that. I'm not going to be an Indy or Milwaukee fan. And it was between Cleveland and Detroit because I loved Rasheed Wallace. Being a prairie boy playing basketball at 6'2", of course, I was made a center. I was like, I'm going to model my game against with Rasheed Wallace. I'm going to be that loud guy. I'm going to be that stretch big, and that's exactly what I tried to emulate. But my good friend that lived on the block ended up picking the Pistons in a series, and I of course had to pick the other side, and that was of course the LeBron going absolutely nuclear against the Pistons, and that basically solidified me for life as a Cavs fan. But between Rasheed Wallace, Vince Carter, Steve Nash, obviously LeBron, like those were my first loves.
I was going to say, man, as a gateway drug, Carlos Boozer on the Cavs, like that worked out poorly, but it got you in the door to LeBron. And so that's pretty, like, hard to argue with that. But also, like, I just love the idea of, I'm going to emulate Rasheed Wallace. Like, that sentence, I want to emulate Rasheed Wallace. I imagine many have tried, probably few have succeeded. An inimitable character, if ever there was one. Question number 2. You mentioned earlier your partner on the Chase Down, Carter Rodriguez. You guys started the show, I believe, back in 2017 as an independent concern. Then you mentioned a few years later, you get the opportunity to actually bring it in under the umbrella of the team as part of the Cavs media, group. Did you have any concerns at that time about going from independent to like under the team umbrella? And, how has that process kind of been for making your show?
Yeah, obviously, I think you have some concerns. They were very, like, throughout the process, they basically let us know, hey, we're comfortable with you guys making criticism, and as long as it's constructive, as long as you're not sitting there being like, oh, so-and-so is an idiot, right, you're going to be fine. And I've been just so impressed by the support of the team. Like, we have not heard from PR about anything we're saying on the podcast, and we've had opportunities to be able to, go on there and talk about, hey, like, this is where this went wrong. And I think one of the things we really try to pride ourselves on is presenting both sides of an argument and then explaining where we fall on it. Like with the Knicks series, even though I picked Cavs in 6, I nailed how the Knicks would win that series if they were to win it. Like I hate that I was right, but I think like what we tried to do is basically like explain our process, explain what we're thinking about here, because even if we're wrong, if you thoroughly explain where you're coming from, you can kind of learn together with the listeners of, okay, this is where it went wrong. This is what I probably prioritized a little too much. And I think because that was already the tone of the podcast, that was already what we were doing, it's just been such a nice fit with the team.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, because if Cavs PR was going to get angry at you, I was going to have to go over to BJ and say, you can't do that. That's not nice.
we love BJ.
Although I'm sure BJ doesn't love me because I tanked Darius Garland season, but it's neither here nor there. Question number 3. What was the last live performance you went to? Music, comedy, theater, whatever.
Ooh, I actually haven't really been in a while to a concert. Funny enough, I think the last time I attended a live concert was the Grey Cup in Winnipeg, where Fall Out Boy was doing the halftime. I think that was probably the last time I've seen a live band.
That's pretty cool though. And Grey Cup, who was in the forgive my lack of knowledge of CFL football. I know some ball, but I don't know CFL ball. Who was in the final there?
In that one, I think it was Edmonton and Ottawa. I think. If I can remember correctly, I believe that's who was in it. It's been a little while. Winnipeg's made 4 straight Grey Cups after a very cursed stretch. Unfortunately, lost the last 2 on basically the last play of the game. So I'm still in recovery there. But hey, Winnipeg's got another Grey Cup coming their way soon in terms of hosting. So I'm hopeful that we'll be in that one.
And, just for the vibes, you got to bring Fall Out Boy back. It was such a good time previously. And you got to, although I guess maybe if that's your opportunity to see live bands, who would you like to play the next Grey Cup halftime show?
Oh God, that's tough. So this most recent one, I almost flew to Hamilton if it wasn't so expensive to attend, because it was Green Day, and I was like, I don't know why Green Day's there, but I'm absolutely going to be there. So I actually love a repeat. Anything that really brings me back to the youth. It'd be fun to see some of the Winnipeg artists get in there as well, but I also don't think that Neil Young is really bringing up the vibes for a Grey Cup halftime.
That would be incredible. It's like, he's just going to play the needle and the damage done at halftime to get everybody really fired up. I would love that. Now I am actively rooting for that to happen.
Yes.
Question number 4, who is your favorite non-Cav to watch in the NBA? And if the answer is LeBron, understand that I mean like non-Cav spiritually. So find somebody else.
Yeah. I think right now it's probably Halliburton. You know, as much as I hate him stepping on Darius's toes as the next Steve Nash, like I just love the way that he plays basketball. There was a while that I was having an existential crisis that, you know, kind of the Morey ball, the heliocentric offenses were going to take over. And I think the NBA has gone away from that. Like, you know, Trey, let's get him another ball handler. Luka, let's get him another ball handler. So I think when I first started seeing Halliburton's numbers, I'm like, is this another guy that just has the ball in his hands all game? No one else gets to touch the ball unless it's an assist opportunity for that guy. Like, is that going to be what it is? And he just plays such a fun, refreshing brand of basketball. The organized chaos that the Pacers have is so much fun to watch. Just such a big fan. And I have a soft spot for point guards. I don't know how it happened. That wasn't where I started my basketball journey, but that's where I am now.
Well, I mean, if your signpost when you were younger was Rashid, yes, Rashid was a big, but like a big with guard skills who wanted to play, you know, and then that was like a generation of bigs that wanted to play with the ball, right? And that leads us to where we are today, where every big can do everything. And we live in an age of monsters, and you got a couple of them in Cleveland. So that's kind of nice. Question number 5. I'm going to go back and I'm going to borrow from our first episode with Jason Concepcion. We did a little fill in the blank, but I'm going to take one of those fill in the blanks to use here in this question. What is the best taunt in the NBA in your eyes?
Oh, the one that is coming to my mind right now, and I hate to do it to him, but as much as I love Giannis, it's people counting during free throws. I saw the Nuggets broadcast had the clock, but recently when the Cavs played the Bucks and Strus was standing there doing the counting on his fingers all the way to 10 and then, 11, 12. To me, that's just so funny because it's so petty. It doesn't make a huge difference, but to me, that's just one of the funniest little. I like the subtle ones. I really like kind of the subtle taunts in the NBA right now.
And that's Max bringing that from Miami. That is just like ages old beef that traveled with him up from Florida. To that point, when Max and Jimmy Butler would just like cross one another's paths and they would just flip each other off, give each other the finger, and it's like this is I know Max seems like a taciturn type of guy, but like the specific nature of that, where it's like him and Jimmy Butler, their love language is flipping one another off, and we certainly appreciate knowing yourself in that way.
Max is quickly becoming one of my favorite role players ever. Like I just love how grumpy he is at all times, and he's personable, but like he just doesn't have a lot of time for anything. And like it's probably the player I identify the most with right now. Like, all right, I'm going 3-point line to 3-point line. I'm going to be gritty. I'm going to do whatever I can. I love the fact that when the Cavs do their junkyard dog photos, like, he's in them, but he's making great effort to barely be in them, where you just see like a little eye over the shoulder or his head's turned the wrong way and whatnot. Like he's a grump, and he's absolutely one of my favorite Cavs.
Well, yeah, I mean, what got you to the contract is that sort of, grumpy nature, and the work is never over with, and everything else is extraneous to that. So keep that going. We are going to keep it going with, I know I said the closing 5 was the last thing, but that's always a lie on this show. You never trust me. I'm an unreliable narrator. The last thing we do is a weekly recommendation. Does not have to be about basketball, can be from whatever walk of life you want. Past examples have included outshine popsicles, making dinner for somebody to show them that you care about them, going to the library, taking walk. Like, there's lots of room here for what constitutes a recommendation. So something that is cool and good that you think would benefit the listeners' lives. Justin Rowan, what is something that you would recommend to our listenership?
I'm going to go with something that I try to hold myself accountable to, and hopefully by saying it on this podcast, I'm going to do it a little bit more.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Don't engage. Like, you do not have to take part in every single debate. Like, I think it's so fitting, especially when we talk about like, hey, the Cavs got to trade 2 of these guys because Mitchell and Allen are replicating the Utah thing that clearly works so well in the postseason. Like, you only need one creator, you only need one role man. Like, you're good to go. You don't have to engage in whatever the debate of the day is, whatever annoying conversation you have. Like, one of the most therapeutic things for me was when LeBron left to LA. I'm like, even though in my mind he's the GOAT, I no longer feel obligated to join in every single one of those conversations and every one of those debates, because you know what? Like, he's doing his thing in LA. I know where I feel. I will have discussions with people that I regularly talk to, that I value their opinion, that I like talking basketball with. But so-and-so in your mentions does not need like a full statement from you on every single topic. You do not have to take part in every single conversation, because it is going to have a negative impact on your mental health. And, you know, even if you're on the winning side of it, the endorphin rush really isn't worth it.
It is a difficult thing to onboard 1,000%, especially if you like a similar story to yours, where like we came of, you know, professional age in this way, whatever, where you're like, well, the way I get into the basketball world is that I am constantly online writing or talking or doing whatever. And so then, my former coworker, John Gonzalez, I would get texts from him that's like, hey, stop it. Hey, stop it. I see you tweeting with people. Stop it. That guy might be right or wrong or whatever, but that guy, you have so much else to do. You have to write something. You've got to prep for a show. You have children. You have a wife. Stop it. You don't need to do that. And then one of the best things that has come across my transom in this regard over however many years is that the meme format of the sad guy looking out one window of the bus and the happy guy looking out the window at the sun. And it's like, endeavor to be the guy looking out at the sun. Like, you don't have to be staring at just everyone fighting with you or arguing with you or saying, you know, you can look at me like, oh, I'm going to go like clean up that pile of papers that are on my desk, or put those books back on the shelf, or wash the dishes, or go for a walk, or do whatever, anything that is not that. Like opening it up and looking at it and seeing, oh, I guess what everyone's doing today is that we're yelling at each other about why this guy is cooked compared to what, like, you don't have to get into this. I love this argument. I love this point. I love this recommendation. It is, as our super producer John Gennaro notes in the side chat to me, a very Canadian recommendation to be nicer to yourself as well as other people. But it's a delightful thing to try to implement in your own life. And I wish all of you who are listening to this good luck in that, because I know it is a challenge for me, a challenge for lots of us, but it is a very good, you do not have to engage. That's a great, great framework for everything. Mine is comparatively less beneficial, but it's still fun. I forget why I was thinking about it this morning. Keep the Canadian stuff going. Twitter user Gourmet Spud, who I've known for many years through online writing, formerly of the great blog Food Court Lunch, was made a joke about like what it would be good to do if you were a late night talk show host, and like you went over, you should have to go over and rate every musical guest performance. You have to walk over and go 8 out of 10 as soon as they finish, or something like that. And it made me think of a supercut that was made about 10 years ago by a comedian named Dave Shumka, a Canadian comedian who was working for the CBC at the time, where he made a supercut of every time David Letterman was walking over to musical guests after their performance. He would walk over every time and say, "Hey, are those your drums?" And he did this like every night for years. And so there's a video of it that's on YouTube. We can find it. Maybe we'll put it in the show notes or something, or I'll tweet the link out later. It is like exactly what it says. It's like 2.5 or 3 minutes of just David Letterman walking over to musicians and going, "Hey, are those your drums? Those are great. Hey, did you rent those? You brought those with you? Those are awesome." And like, come to find out, David Letterman played drums. And so some of it was like he was actually interested. He recognized, oh, those are streamliners. Those are real nice, top of the line. But then some of it is also just like, you have to do the same thing thousands of times over the course of your career. Make a little game for yourself. Make a little bit that's just for you, something that makes it a little, that you get a kick out of, whether anybody else does or doesn't. I love that idea. It makes me laugh every time I think about it and then watch the video. So I recommend that's a good way to spend 2.5 minutes. Watching it this morning made me think like, oh, I should come up with a little bit that's just for myself on this show. And then my second thought was like, this entire show is just a little bit for myself. So maybe I don't need to add a hat on a hat for that. I just get to keep enjoying the bit as it exists. I have very much enjoyed this bit as it exists, Justin. And before we get going, I want to make sure I recommend one more time, The Chase Down, a Cleveland Cavaliers pod. You can get it wherever you're finding these podcasts, wherever you're watching us. They do, presented by Fubo, I believe. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And it's but streamed on YouTube. They, you guys went live after the game last night, multiple episodes a week. Fantastic. The vibes are great. The analysis is great. It's not, it's not just, carrying water for the Cavs. It is a very smart and analytical and friendly and fun show. Cannot recommend it highly enough. Maybe I know that the Darius Garland piece didn't work out, but maybe we could do a home and home and I would join you at some point. It'd be my pleasure to do it again. Justin, anything else that you would like to point people toward on the way out the door, where they can find your work, etc.?
No, I appreciate all that. We like to have a lot of fun. One of the weirdest phenomenons that we have is like among our listeners, among our Discord people, like we have fans of other teams. They're like, we just like, hanging out and listening to that. We oddly enough have a few Knicks fans as well. And I hope that we can do a little home and home. Let's do a rematch, but let's make it the second round. Like let's emotionally get there. Like
works for everybody that way.
Yeah, I want a little less on the line emotionally there, but no, Chasetown's basically all I got going on. I've kind of streamlined my hobbies to that, and appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Although I will insist that you pick up a hobby. We can't have making content for the internet be our only hobby. But
that's fair. That's fair.
But it is a good one. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Devine Intervention. I want to make sure to thank Justin Rowan for taking all this time to be with us and to check in with himself about a couple of things, including his need to develop a hobby. Thank you to super producer John Gennaro for everything that he does to make this show look and sound as good as it does. If you've made it to the end of this podcast, God bless you. Thank you so much. Make sure to rate and review us wherever you are consuming this podcast. A review would be great. 5-star rating. These things help us grow the show. They help with discoverability. Tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell anybody you come across. Ask them if that's their drums. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you again next week. Take care of yourself. You deserve it.